Welcome back to a new episode of the Threshold Lab, and today I'm really excited to continue our interview and conversation series with guest coaches who are talking about the inner game of coaching. And today I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm talking with Coach Mike Candrea, formerly of University of Arizona softball, and several other stops along the way. So I'm really excited to have you here today, Mike, and thanks so much for being on.
Well, thanks for having me, Zach.
I'm really looking forward to this, and I did as much homework as I could leading into this conversation. I've gotten a chance to hear some of the things that are important to you as it relates to leadership, which I'm really excited to kind of dive into and really dive into your coaching journey. But before we get there, I know that you're a few years now post retirement as a full time head coach, and last year in particular, you transitioned into this role of interim AD at U of A. So, how's that shift been for you from being a coach to a role that now supports other coaches?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting to say. I never got a chance to look at the department from a 10,000-foot view. You were always kind of in your own submarine, taking care of your own program, and so now I've had a chance to spend some time with other coaches, watch them practice, watch them compete, have some conversations, trying to mentor many of them because when I took this over, we had six new head coaches, so it was definitely a need for a voice for them to talk to and for me to kind of look at them and kind of evaluate what I see and try to help them out along the way.
I would imagine you're just an invaluable sounding board for so many of those coaches, especially ones that maybe are just starting out in their own coaching journeys. And I'm kind of curious for you now being kind of removed in the trenches, so to speak, or in the arena of coaching, and now seeing some of the challenges and things that coaches are currently facing. Are there any things that you're now seeing with maybe a different vantage point, a different perspective, or something that you're learning that maybe you didn't see as clearly when you were a head coach?
Well, the climate of college athletics has completely changed. Before I retired, I didn't have to worry about the transfer portal or NIL, and now we're getting into revenue shares. So yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics that coaches today are trying to navigate through, and we still don't know all the answers yet. But it's been quite interesting because it's just different. All I had to worry about was getting a kid to the University of Arizona, giving them a scholarship, preparing them for life after softball, and they were with me for 4 years. Never have to worry about that. Where now it seems like they're chasing the bag of money, and so it's pretty violent right now. Even if you do the right things, there's just so many opportunities for kids to cash in on their careers in college, which I wasn't used to, and so yeah, that has been very very unique for me and very challenging. And some of those questions that coaches have in that arena, I really have a hard time helping them because I never went through it. But I think at the end of the day, we all coach for the same reason, and that is the student athlete. So I always tell them if you keep the student athlete in the forefront of all of your decisions, then you're going to be okay.
You mentioned just how volatile and really uncertain that landscape now is for collegiate coaches. And, with your transition into this role now, what you kind of touched on at the beginning, but I'm curious, like, what's exciting you the most about this new challenge for you in your kind of professional career?
Well, I think my time that's available right now is very unique and different because I was a grinder, and all I thought about was getting my team prepared for the next event. And now I have some time, to kind of sit back and reflect and do some things that I want to do. I'm an avid golfer, and I love playing golf. And this position now has allowed me some time to pursue my personal goals, but to also still be involved in the department. And so it has it's been very unique for me. I probably have learned a lot, watching different coaches because I never had a chance of that. I grew up with some really good mentors, but I really didn't have a chance to actually watch them in action. Where now I'll take an afternoon and go out and watch men's basketball or watch, football practice and watch swimming. And you you would be amazed what you can learn from other people because everyone does it a little bit differently. And I think that's the uniqueness of coaching is blending your own skills and your own personalities into trying to improve skill set and the mentality of young people to perform at a high level.
I'm excited to unpack that more as we get into this conversation, and I think that's actually a really nice, segue to where I'd actually like to start is maybe kind of the origin for you as a coach. And in doing some homework, you were a collegiate baseball player. Sounds like career may have got cut a little bit short via an injury. And, I'm curious not only to maybe have you expand a little bit on that, but also what was or who was maybe that catalyst for you that helped you make that transition to coaching after being a player?
Yeah, that's a really good one because I grew up in love with the bat and ball game. So from the time I was 5 years old, that's all I thought about was playing baseball or playing sports. And I had an opportunity to pursue a career in college in baseball, and I had my whole career cut short with a Tommy John surgery. But that was before Tommy John, so they didn't call it Mike Candrea surgery. But anyway, it made me kind of rethink some things, and it was kind of scary to be honest with you, because I really didn't know what I was going to do. I started off as a business major, trying to chase the money, and then I kind of followed my passion, and my passion was always athletics. And so I went in and pursued my degree in physical education and kinesiology, and I was very fortunate to have to play for a guy at Central Arizona College, Kenny Richardson. And after my career got cut short there, he asked me to start coaching. So obviously he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and so I finished my college career at ASU. And while I was doing that, I started coaching in 1976, my very first job, and we won a national championship. And so I'm thinking to myself, man, this is fun. This is easy. And
Yeah.
I did that for about 5 years. I was an assistant baseball coach. Got a chance to coach some really good guys, and in fact, Tom Pagnazzi, who was an all-star catcher for the Cardinals, was one of the last that I coached in baseball, and then I coached his wife in softball. So that was kind of unique. But I still remember the day when George Young, who was the athletic director, four-time Olympian, bronze medal winner in Mexico City, walked in the office and said, "Mike, I need your help." And I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I need you to coach the women's softball team." And I kind of looked at him with like a deer in headlights, like, what do you mean? I don't want to coach women, and I'm a good baseball coach, And that was my goal back then, was to be a baseball coach. And so being an assistant coach, I decided it would be a good opportunity for me to kind of find out what I could do on my own. And I took the job, and I took it for a year, and I had to go out and learn a little bit about softball because it was completely different, much quicker game, a lot more bunting. Pitching was absolutely completely different. I felt helpless sometimes because I really didn't know how to help our pitchers. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to kind of cash in on my recruiting knowledge from baseball. And I went out and recruited a pitcher because I felt like if I could get a pitcher, we could win the whole damn thing. And I did. I went out and recruited Connie Clark, who was at Greenway High School at the time, and ASU and U of A weren't recruiting her heavy, and I said all she can do is say no, and I ended up landing her, and she ended up being a Broderick Award winner at Cal State Fullerton, won a national championship, but she won two championships for me at Central Arizona, and so I always feel like I have to thank her for the start of my career. And from there, I got the job at Arizona and never looked back. I mean, it's 37, 45 years later, I'm in the softball world. And that was, right around Title IX. And so the game of softball at the collegiate level was not what you see today. It was basically a step above rec softball, summer softball. So I had the opportunity to watch this game grow from the ground up and be a part of that growth. It was interesting because when I first got into softball, it was like no one wanted to share information, and I'm going like, "Hey, gang, the game's the same. I mean, the physical skills are the same. You got to be able to throw it, and you got to be able to catch, and you got to be able to field, and you got to be able to hit. I mean, it doesn't not different than baseball." So convincing people that fast pitch softball was very similar to baseball, which is the approach that I took, kind of turned the world upside down a little bit because we're the first team to wear pants. When I went in there, yeah, everyone was wearing shorts, and so I said, you can't wear shorts and play this game. We're going to play the game aggressively, and so I put pants on them, and the next thing you know, everyone's wearing pants. But I was one of the first to really share information because I felt like I had so many good mentors in my life, and that's where I learned, my philosophy was from very different people. And I was blessed to be in baseball and be in the junior college level where there were some really great coaches back then. I mean, Gary Ward and Jim Fry and, Freddie Nelson and Rich Allday, Kenny Richardson. I mean, the list went on, and Pug Marriage. And I was always a student of the game, so I was always in their back pockets trying to find out what this game was all about. And that was kind of the start of me kind of coming up with my philosophy and my approach. And then obviously it changed throughout the years because the game's changed,
Yeah.
But I still remember today when a guy came into my office after we won the championship in '91, our first championship, and that was a bunch of Arizona kids, no five-star athletes. We had good pitching, not great pitching, but we ended up beating Lisa Fernandez in the championship game, 1-0. We scored one run on one hit. They had no runs on two hits, and it was a one-game showdown back then. And I always look back and I go, God, if I had to play her the best 3 out of 5, we would have never done it, So I figured they gave me that championship to kind of get my career started. And then I fell in love with the game. I went out and watched the men's game and at the very highest level and figured out what it looks like, and I loved the speed of the game. I loved the short game, the speed. There's very little margin for error, and the game is so quick. And that kind of got me going a little bit to what do we need to do to bring this game to the next level. And Bill Hillenbrand came to my office and he goes, Mike, I want to help you. And I go, what's that? He goes, what do you have in mind? I go, well, here's this napkin that I had, and I had drawn the stadium on it. And I figured that if we could build the stadium for fast pitch softball, we could put people in the seats. So we built the very first stadium of its kind around the country for fast pitch softball. And to this day, we are still selling out because it's a great, great sport. And, that was kind of the beginning of it. And I go back and I've just been blessed by so many people that have come into my life that have kind of helped me with this journey because it is a journey. There's a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things that I would change back then. But as a young coach, you had one goal in mind, and that was pedal to the metal. Try to get 1% better every day and build a team. So there's a lot of things that changed. I mean, my early recruiting, I would go after the best skilled kid in the country, and I didn't worry about the intangibles. I didn't worry about their work ethic or whether they were a good teammate or not. And as I grew older, that changed completely because my priorities have changed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love hearing kind of that story of kind of where it all began, but also who's played a role in that. And I'm sure that was just the start of that list. You know, we like to say that success is certainly not a solo journey. And to hear you describe so many different people that not only influence you, but as a player, as a baseball coach, and then in your transition to being a softball coach is really honestly very cool. And I'm trying to think of exactly where I'd like to go with that because you kind of touched on a couple of things I was curious about of just like what kept you. At what point did you know softball was where you weren't like it was a long term thing for you,
Yeah.
where you were like, this is the space I want to continue to coach in?
Well, I think when I determined that I wanted to pursue it at the highest level at that time, and that was Division One, and so when I came to Arizona, I pretty much jumped in full board to say, you know what, I'm gonna coach softball for as long as I can. I want to make this program not just a winner, a flash in a pan, but I wanted a consistent program, that we could build, with a legacy of some good players, great players. The facility was phenomenal, and I think once we built that facility, could not look back. And I had many opportunities to leave Arizona, but never did because of I guess, the tradition that was built there. I always felt like that I was the steward of that tradition.
Yeah.
And so I never saw myself going any other place other than coaching a couple Olympic teams, which was kind of fun to be able to coach some of the people that I competed against and be on the same time on the same team.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be excited. I have a couple questions that I'll
Yeah,
at some point ask
yeah,
you about those experiences, and I'm curious, like you've obviously accomplished so much in your career, let alone not just results and titles and accolades and those types of things, but even just hearing you describe being really a pioneer for the game and what you helped played a role in building. So I'm curious though, like if we kind of strip all of that away for a moment, how would Mike Candrea describe himself as a coach? Which I'm guessing went through a bit of an evolution, but for you, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I always told people that I always use the three C's, and not because of my last name, but the very first thing is I always want to be competent. So I was a student of the game, and like I said, I grew up in the baseball, and I still belong to the American Baseball Coaches Association because I love baseball coaches. I love the way they sit around in the lobby and talk the game, and I've been so blessed to be able to be in that network of people and know them to continue to learn with that regard. But I think you have to be good at what you do because I felt like the better information that I had, the better information my kids had, and I always want to try to stay, one up on everyone. And so I wouldn't say that I was innovative, but I was always trying to find better verbiage to teach the game because the game really doesn't change. But I think there's great teachers that can simplify the game. And to me, that's what baseball is all about. It's not rocket science, but it's being able to keep it simple and to a point where you can play the game unconscious. And we always talk about that. Being unconscious and competent is a big part of being able to play this game because it's a game of reaction. I always wanted to be consistent. As a person, I think that's so huge, especially coaching young women. I always felt like the people that I was going to have on my staff and surround them with had to have stability in their own life. Because if they have stability in their own life, they're going to bring that to the table every day, to work every day. And I just think young kids have enough roller coasters that they're on throughout life that they need some stability. And so consistency was a huge part for me. I wanted a kid to know what I was going to be like, whether we won by 10 runs or we lost by 10 runs. So I think that was important. And then the third thing is that I care about them as an individual. I think at the end of the day, I realized that, I used to spend all my time coaching the athlete and make them as good as I could as a softball player. But then later in my career, I realized that I was coaching the person a lot more than I was the athlete. Because once I could get the person to feel good about themselves, then the athlete can come out. But until you capture that and build that relationship, relationships are everything. And so if I describe myself, I was a servant leader that always followed its moral compass. Because I always felt as a coach, you were going to get put in a corner sometime in your career that you're going to have to make a decision that's going to have a huge effect on the future of your career. And I never wanted to disappoint any of the players that I have coached over the years. And so I'm always thinking about how would this affect the players that I coached before I made decisions. And so I'm a man of faith, and so I try to follow my moral compass as much as I could. But being a servant leader, I think I realized that, you need to have a village to be successful. And so I think if there's one thing I did really well is I made everyone feel important in our program, from from my secretary to the people that are dragging my field. They are a part of our team. And if we want a championship, they want a championship. And I think I've been very good at that. I think I'm a good relationship builder. Probably better so than being an X's and O's coach. I think I understand the game, but I think my strength was getting the most out of kids because I could build relationships, and then I could have tough discussions with them, because I was the first one in their life sometimes to tell them that, you're not the best thing since sliced bread. You're going to have to work for everything. And you think it's tough now, wait till you get into life. And so, you're always challenged as a coach to talk the talk and, or talk to walk. I mean, walk the talk, it's important. If I say something, they know it's going to mean something. And, I left an All-American pitcher home right before going to the College World Series because she broke one of our team rules. And that was a tough decision. But you know what? I had to make it, and I did. And we went and won it without her. And then that just shot all over the world that, you know what? You got to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, if you do the right things, then you'll never have to regret any decisions that you're making, especially when you're dealing with young people.
Yeah. One of the things that you're describing really well is the role that coaches and leaders play in, and really kind of being that thermostat for their team, right? Like they set the
Right.
temperature for everybody in the organization, and as you noted, not just the players, but everybody. So I'm curious though, when you reflect the mirror now towards your players and the people that you led, what did you want them to feel when it came to being led by you?
Well, I wanted them to know that they had someone that trusted in them, and that was loyal to them, and that I was their father away from home. And at the end of the day, when someone says, "Hey, you're like a dad to me," that was the biggest compliment that I could ever get from a female athlete. Because I always told them, I'm not here to be your friend. If you want a friend, go buy you a dog. But I want you to know that I care about you, and I care about you as much because I want to be part of your life forever. And that's one thing I realized, about dealing with the female athlete was, men have to play good to feel good. Women have to feel good to play good. And so I had to spend a lot of time trying to make them feel good about themselves. And I think that's one thing that's changed more than anything is if I go back to my career, we had mental performance. The Ken Revises of the world and the mental game of baseball. I mean, all that stuff I live by. But now it's mental health because there's so many other factors in their lives. And, I look back, I grew up without a cell phone. I grew up without social media. I played without worrying about someone taking pot shots at me because we didn't have all that. We had a black and white TV with rabbit ears, and I would emulate Mickey Mantle, and that's how I learned how to play the game. Where today, these poor kids are getting, it's tough. because social media has kind of changed the way people can attack you, and they are sensitive. I mean, they're young people, and sometimes I look at our basketball players. They're 7 footers, and they look like these men, but they're really boys still. And so you have to remind yourself, that. And I think that's what really made me say, you know what, I got to spend more time on the person. I got to find out more about them. And if I can keep the way they feel about themselves in check, then it opens a lot of doors to help their skills, down the road. But if you don't do that, then I think you're kind of missing the boat because it's hard to help.
Mhm. Was there a specific moment or at any point in your career where there was that like aha moment for you where that became understood? That notion of like the caring and really like investing in the people. Was there at any point in time a specific moment that really resonated with that?
Well, let me start by saying that one of the toughest parts of my job, my career, was trying to find balance in my own life. Um, I spent more time with other people's kids than my own. And if you say the aha moment to me was nothing to do with the game. It was about the balance that I was missing in my life because I'd blow through all the victories. I would agonize on the defeats like we all do. But on the other hand, I forgot about the people that I truly loved, and it was my own family because I commuted from Casa Grande to Tucson for 21 years. So you can imagine that's a lot of time in the car. And I would come here early in the morning. I would leave late at night. I'd go home, eat dinner, get up, do the same thing. And I was coaching the national team in '94, getting ready for the '96 Olympic Games in Atlanta. Very first game that softball was in. And I was in St. John's, Newfoundland, and coaching the best team in the world. I just won my third national championship in Arizona. And you think that I would be on the top of the world because I was at the top of my profession at the time, but I was there for a month and I was miserable and I couldn't figure it out. Something was not quite right, and I think when I went home, my son at the time said, "Dad," he didn't say welcome home. He said, "Dad, can we talk?" And I go, "Yeah, what's wrong, Michael?" He goes, "Would you consider dropping out of the USA coaching pool so that you can watch me play baseball?" That changed my whole approach to everything that I looked at. Because I was making the game bigger than what it really was. Yeah, we all like to win. We all like to compete. But the game will never be life threatening to me. But it was life threatening to me early in my career. And after that, I realized I coached Michael for the next 3 summers. Um, Had a blast. Got to coach with Clint Myers, a good friend of mine and good baseball man, and coached his kids and my kids. And if it wasn't for Michael, I probably wouldn't have taken that opportunity. And to me, that kind of woke me up to say, you know what, Mike, you have to start. Number one, you got to start judging your success on something other than national championships, because that was my big thing. If I won a championship, then I was successful. I had a good summer. If I didn't win, I was grinding, figuring out why I didn't and what I need to do to get back there, and will I ever get back there, that type of stuff. And I think once I went through that, it made me realize, hey, take a deep breath, relax. You got to start enjoying it. You got to start enjoying the small victories. And you got to start enjoying the process. You got to start enjoying the people around you. And that kind of changed me, and it continued to change me a little bit because in 2004, I was coaching the Olympic team. And right before that, my wife had retired from work so that she could travel with me for the first time. And she we're in the last stop in Wisconsin. We're on a tour, 46 states, We were on our last stop, and she got up in the morning, went for a walk, came back, brought me breakfast, went to the airport. I always had her check in first. So she went and checked in, went, sat at the gate, and next thing you know, the girls are running at me and going, "Your wife's down." And Sue had died of a brain aneurysm. Perfectly healthy one moment, gone the next. That changed me. It made me really realize that I need to start enjoying every day because we're not guaranteed it. And it got me back. My faith has always been a big part of me, but truthfully, that really made me realize how important it was. That it's not whether you're going to need it or not; it's when. And the when came because I'd lost a child early in my career, 24 years old, and we always lose mom and dads. Those are a little bit different, but losing your wife and all of a sudden you're 46 years old and you don't know the color of your checkbook. You don't know what your kids need. You realize that there was a whole nother aspect that was going on to allow you to do what you did. And that influenced me, I think, the way I treated people and parents. And, I always felt like this could be the last practice I have with this kid. Right? And so it definitely tempered me a little bit and made me a lot more compassionate for them as people as much as for them as athletes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's everything that you went through and you've gone through. It creates this sense of perspective and this sense of appreciation. And one thing that I've heard you talk a little bit about, which I hear, having studied under Ken Revisa,
Yeah.
he certainly has a special place in my heart, but the notion of being where your feet are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes it can take conversations, words, or experiences to kind of pull us in. Because for so many coaches, I think what you're describing is there's always the what's next. Like you
Right.
achieve and you just get right back on and okay, well, what's next? But like we lose sight of sometimes what is now, what is
Right.
here, if you will. How how did coaching from a space of being where your feet were towards the end of your or towards the back end of your
Hmm.
coaching career really change you or influence you?
It's I can't hardly even describe it. It's been completely different. That's one thing about retirement is I, for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking toward the next athlete or the next performance or the next game. I every day's a Saturday. I always tell people right now, every day's a Saturday. I can get up and do what I want to do and enjoy what I want to do and be able to enjoy my grandkids and my kids. I felt like I've tried to play catch up in life. Most coaches understand that. Professional coaches, especially. I've been gifted to have a chance to coach Jasmine Paris Chica. Tony's a good friend of mine, and always love sitting around talking to him. It's and yeah, it's a grind. And sometimes you don't realize it until it's gone. And I think that's the one thing is I'm glad I woke up and I'm glad I can still be able to savor some of the things that you work so hard for. But be where your feet are is it carries on another um, meaning for me because I always felt like there's, if you could get kids to control the controllable, we always talk about that attitude, effort, and I always said focus. Because if I could get a kid to come into practice every day and be where their feet were and focus on what we're doing, it's amazing how much better they get. And that's a hard thing to do unless you do a good job of knowing the person. It's hard for them sometimes to leave their baggage outside the stadium and come in and give it everything that they have. But I think that has really helped a lot of players to understand that. You can't worry about yesterday, you can't worry about tomorrow. It's what are you doing right now? And I think that's how I live my life is I want to get the most out of every day. Where before when I was young, it was like God, I've got forever to live. Well, I'll tell you one thing, man. I'm going to turn 70 years old, and it's like, whoa. I don't feel it. I don't act it, but you know what? It's there. My dad passed away at 77. And I remember sitting at my desk one day, and I was thinking about my dad, and I pulled out this little tape measure, and I pulled out 77 inches, and then at the time I took away what I was like 60, and I'm going, that's what I got left. So sometimes a little different perspective in life can help you, I think, become even a better mentor and a better coach, because that's a big part of it. A big part of it is listening, and I don't know anyone that I can say affected or helped me that weren't good listeners. They had to put up with a lot of my BS to be able to help me. And I think that's so much right now with coaching. I mean, the game hasn't changed. It's just the the things that we've stacked on ourselves that have changed the game. You know, I always said that the mental game is kind of like having a deck of cards, and the more you play the game and the more you experience, the bigger your deck is. But on the other hand, the great thing about baseball and softball is you got to be able to get the right card to the top when you need it. So not only do you have to have a great foundation, but you have to be able to know the game well enough that you can get the right card on top of the deck. And I
Yeah.
always loved that. I mean, that's the part I loved about the game. And I go back now and I look at athletes and people go, well, who's your best here and and I tend to look more at them as a whole, holistically. What type of athlete were they? Were they, because the one thing I learned about the Olympic team, those kids are great teammates, because you're going to have 15 kids that are all Americans and all world, and someone's going to play and someone's not going to play. But the one thing that they were is they were emotionally stable and they were great teammates. And they had great eyes, the game that we play. But you start looking at stuff like that, and that's truly what you tend to focus on with young kids. I mean, it's a very difficult game. We play a game of failure. So I thought one of the things I did well is teach kids how to fail and how to fail forward, because I was in that spot before as a coach that I would fail backwards. I would grind even more. I would work harder, not smarter, and you realize that that's not going to get you there. So I
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy life, and I look back at my career, and I just feel blessed. Number one, that I could follow my passion. I think that's the biggest thing. I could follow my passion. The bat and ball game was my passion. I've been on a baseball field or softball field my entire life. And I always say that I never have worked a day in my life because I'm doing what I love to do. So you look back at your life and you go, you're pretty blessed. You know. And then you look at
Ah,
your grandkids and you go, God, we got beat today, 2-1. But then you go home and you go, really? They make you forget it very quickly. So,
yeah, they're just excited that Grandpa is home and
right.
spend and present with them.
Exactly. Because like
Yeah,
right
no,
now, I
that
would give anything to have a conversation with my dad. My dad was completely different than me. He was a jazz musician, very good one. Died a frustrated man because he had 4 kids and none of us had any musical talent. But I used to think when I was a little kid, I used to follow him around with my little plastic lawnmower and think he was the smartest guy in the world. I got into high school, he was the dumbest guy in the world. And then as I got older, I'm going, you know what? He was pretty smart.
yeah, yeah. It comes full circle for
Sure.
sure. Yeah, I have a year and a half or 1.5 year old, so I'm gonna try
Oh,
to enjoy this time currently of him thinking I'm the greatest thing since sliced
absolutely.
bread. Because I know I've talked to enough people that they reach the teens and all of a sudden it's a little different.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Uh, one thing that I really appreciated that you hit on a few things that I really
Yeah.
appreciated, but one in particular is this notion of helping. your players fail forward, and you mentioned kind of the difference between failing backward versus forward, and so I would be curious though how you got not just yourself to be skilled at that, but also like your fellow staff, like as a collective coaching staff. What was it like for you all to make sure that you all failed forward too, to kind of model that for your players?
Well, I think picking your staff is probably the most important thing because everyone's going to have a finger in the recipe, right? And you want to make sure that those are the correct ones. And so